Salve, salve galera, beleza? Caju e mais um vídeo com vocês, tudo tranquilo? Hoje vamos a um vídeo um pouco diferente, né? Falei ali com o desenvolvedor do Lolminer, o Lolliedieb, e aí combinei com ele de mandar umas perguntas e ele mandar as respostas pra gente, né? Essas perguntas foram ali levantadas na comunidade. Galera ali no YouTube, na comunidade do YouTube, no Discord, deram sugestões de perguntas, elencamos 10 perguntas e mandamos para ele. Aproveitando aí essa aproximação que eu tenho aí, fazendo alguns testes de beta e etc., consegui ver o que é que ele pensa, como funciona, algumas coisas bem interessantes que muita gente tem dúvida, e aí eu acho que com esse vídeo a gente consegue responder. Então, dedo no like, se inscreva no canal e vamos aí para o vídeo. Então, como eu falei, isso não foi uma entrevista ao vivo, né? Mandei as perguntas para ele. Ele é um cara muito corrido com esses desenvolvimentos aí, as melhorias do Lolminer, do trabalho, outros trabalhos que ele tem. E ele demorou um tempo para me responder, né? E como é que vai funcionar esse vídeo? Eu vou fazer as perguntas em português, legendar aqui em inglês, caso outras pessoas fora do Brasil queiram assistir o vídeo, e ele vai me responder em inglês. E eu vou ter a legenda das respostas dele em português. Talvez a tradução não seja literal, mas vai dar para a gente entender muito bem. E aí é bem interessante, né? Nunca tivemos nenhum vídeo desse tipo aqui na comunidade BR. E vamos ver como que a gente vai se sair nesse vídeo, beleza? Primeiramente, né, quero agradecer aí a participação do Lolliedieb e expressar essa minha alegria de estar podendo participar, fazer esse vídeo com o desenvolvedor do Lolminer, né? Eu acho que qualquer minerador que minera aí há algum tempo já utilizou o Lolminer em algum momento, seja em dual mining, triple mining, single mining, ou se não utilizou ainda, começou recentemente, já ouviu falar do Lolminer, né? Agradeço também essa oportunidade de estreitar essa relação da comunidade de mineradores do Brasil com os desenvolvedores aí do Lolminer e com o resto do mundo aí da mineração. Então, vamos lá, as perguntas da comunidade, né? São 10 perguntas.
Yeah, hi. First of all, thank you for the invitation and thanks for having me on your channel today. And I really need to apologize. I know this episode had been planned for quite a while, and well, I was just so much blocked with offline stuff that I didn't make it earlier, and so I apologize for not coming here earlier. So, but well, let's go. Let's see what you've got for me.
Primeira pergunta é: como surgiu o Lolminer?
Oh, well, that's a longer story. I hope you've got some time for me. Well, it all started in 2017. Well, my whole crypto journey started that year, so it's not really a surprise. I started a little bit trading, but not really successful, nor in any way with reasonable amounts. And also started myself some mining, mostly Zcash. Back then it was possible to mine it on a GPU. That was like early summer 2017. And yeah, I was stuck in this crypto hype that had been around then. And well, I've got a little bit of background with graphic cards. I did program my very first graphic card applications in like 2010, 2011, mostly university stuff, doing elliptic curve arithmetic and other, let's say, computational heavy stuff on graphic cards, but more for scientific purposes. And you know, I've got a background in computational mathematics. And also, after mining for a while, I just started wondering, okay, how does all of this work? Yeah, I was kind of excited to learn about it. And I also thought, well, if you're not able to do this, who else? Yeah, you know, if you've studied that stuff and already got your first experiences with GPUs. And so later that year, like in late autumn, I picked a small cap coin that was on the variant of Equihash, because I started with Zcash, and also was kind of familiar with that algorithm at the point because I did read into what it is about, and then started to write my own solver. This was finally completed then in early 2018, and well, the very first version of Lolminer was just horrible in my opinion. If you look now backwards, it needed to run one instance per GPU, for example, and the Windows version was frequently crashing because it was just a cross-compiled version developed on Linux. I didn't have any specific codes for AMDs or NVIDIAs. It was all just running on OpenCL. With the consequence that on NVIDIAs, we, for example, had extremely high CPU utilization because of the bad driver. It also didn't have any API or so. It was just a screen output with the speed. And well, it still was a kind of success because it was quite fast compared to the competition on that coin at that point. But I did pick something that was a really small cap coin at that point, and with only one competing software. And at least on NVIDIA cards, my variant was faster. It wasn't fast by any means, though. Later on, I wrote a variant of that exact algorithm that was almost twice as fast as my initial submission. But still, with the property it has, it was quite a successful for me. And yeah, that was how it started. Afterwards, it did all develop quite well because, in particular, in the Equihash community, I made myself a little bit a name by communicating a lot with the people. If you remember, in the summer of 18, we had some problems on some coins, like, for example, Bitcoin Gold or Flux. Back then still named Zellhash. And they wanted to fork away from the original Zcash algorithm because there were too many devices online mining that algorithm. So they wanted to go, well, they suffered from 51% attacks because of this. And so they wanted to move to variants that are more diverse, more individual to the coin, not all mining on the exact same algorithm. And well, with my small experience I had gained so far, I did a little bit of advisory and also coded the first AMD codes then, because many had some CUDA servers but not really AMD ones. And that was how I got more into the discussion and got more into contact with other developers. And this was kind of how it all started back then. But let's say really professional, all of the stuff that later got with coins like Ethash, that was more than 2 years later, yeah. That was when it really got flying.
A segunda pergunta: quantos desenvolvedores fazem parte da equipe do Lolminer?
Well, yeah, so how many developers out there? That depends a little bit on what you define to be a developer. Most of the stuff is still coded by only me, so I'm still the only person having the full source code of the whole miner. In particular, in the whole environment, I have some people people's helping me, like the profit switcher or the ZIL switcher, for example, and also the Windows GUI. There more people are involved. I'd overall say the core team, so myself plus the testers are like 4 persons. So those people that have very early alpha versions shared, then also still could be crashy, for example, or where we need to go a little bit more into the details and into the cleanup. Yeah, beside that, okay, as said, most of the GPU codes are still by me, and also of the CPU codes. There's one exception, of course, and that's the collaboration with BZ Miner that we started for Nexa, which I'm very, very grateful above, because it's a very complicated algorithm, and I don't know if I really would have started it on my own. And I was able to build on a huge pre-work he did, and then brought in my experiences with the computational math behind the algorithm to speed it all up. And so that's really a code that was made in a collaboration. And so you could say there are GPU codes of 2 developers in the miner, and yeah, but CPU side is mostly still by me. Yeah.
Pergunta 3 é: quais são os critérios que vocês levam em conta para minerar determinado algoritmo, determinada moeda?
Yeah, so what criteria? I guess the most important criteria is still kind of needs to be interesting for me. It needs to trigger me. So I like to code at it. It's nothing worse than when you really need to code on something where you don't feel the joy doing it and don't have a passion for it. So I myself review a lot of projects. I'm looking a little bit into them, having a look what's their background, is it a proof of work well made, do I see any flaws, or do I consider it a good idea? Well, I won't say there's nothing worse than uncreative proof of work. That's also not true. I mean, if it's well made, I'm fine with that. What, for example, I personally dislike a lot if projects are just concatenating different hash functions. So you start with SHA and then put it into Skyne and then put it into whatever Blake, and just lining them up in a row without really reason, doing this particular order, or well, that for me is always like, okay, this was fastly made to create something that is new, but without really creativity in behind it, that I kind of dislike. Well, so that's the one criterion. The other one, of course, is how many people will profit from this new code. For example, if you have something that's already very, very well covered, then this is usually a reason why I won't enter it. For example, people are asking me for 2 years now to join raving mining community and then to start with Capo, and I mean, it would be possible, but on the other hand, there are quite some great codes that are already there, and I don't see really yet where I could add something on top of it, like where I could make clear that this is really something new. Yeah, you need to give people a reason to switch to your software, and there I don't see it different. For example, with Nexa, where we had only very few software out there doing it yet, and where we really saw a point of, hey, we can improve this, and it also did work somehow. Yeah, when we started the whole thing, like mid-range card was like a 3070 on stock clocks, was like 5 to 6 megahertz per second. And now we're above 70 with the same settings, with proper overclock, maybe even reaching close to 100. And so there we really saw a point of giving a lot of new value to it. And well, that also is very motivating if you really can see the progress. Yeah, so then those are the criteria going into creating new codes. Looking where can I really add something new, or where do I have an idea where I'm sure this was not yet covered. And yeah, it's a little bit like a kid playing. Yeah, you need some kind of joy doing it, and some kind of motivation and the excitement to find something new. That's the most driving point for me.
Quarta pergunta: como funciona o dev fee do minerador, a taxa do minerador, e por que diferentes algoritmos possuem dev fee, uma taxa diferente?
Yeah, how does the fee work? Well, you said how does the fee work today, but the way the fee worked for me was like constant from the beginning. I always wanted the people not really noticing the fee mining does happen, and I also didn't want something that was very common at that time, to disconnect the user and then to have a certain gap in their mining hash rate and then coming back, because that's connect and disconnect could be very annoying. And also, especially for the Ethash miner in the beginning, It was like this epoch changes then sometimes when mining the def fee. Well, that's just disturbing and an additional source of crash, and I didn't want to have all of this. So how does it work for Lolminer? The software creates literally two connections, one for the user and one for the fee, and both processing normal mining work. And it is like, one time we called the kernel for me, and then like 99 times for the user. But else with exactly the same algorithm, exactly the same parameters. When you have the situation like for different equihash variants, or well, let's say same variant but different personalization parameter, then the miner is able to switch that internally very, very fast. So it is for me possible to receive fee in Bitcoin Gold while anyone else is, well, the user is mining something else with the same algorithm, or to receive fee for, not for a different epoch. If you think about Ethash, there I coded my fee backend in a way that it would automatically pull different servers with different work, with different epochs, and the user defines what epoch is mined. So if it sees, okay, this doesn't fit, then it goes to the next server for the fee. In case it doesn't find any, then it's literally free of fee. So if you're starting now a very new Ethash coin that is not yet covered by my internal fee servers, then you won't mine it completely for free. For the other ones, for the known ones, there's just then the second connection staying up, feeding my work into the miner. And the idea is that you literally don't really recognize it. It will mine like one feed round every 40 seconds or so, maybe, and then for a very, very short time, so you as a user don't really notice it. So why are there different fee levels? That always depends a little bit on how much work went into creating the codes, but also, of course, how large is the network. Like with Ethash, for example, it was quite easily to get your needed return with 0.7% fee, and also for it would also have been possible doing that with even less, like 0.5. Wouldn't be any problem at all, because the network was just so huge, and my market share was like 5 or 6% most of the time, and that was perfectly fine for me for the return, and considering the time, of course, going into this. With other networks, it's more complicated. Like if you consider Nexa, the network is just smaller, but still the development time of that algorithm wasn't. So still needed like 3 to 4 months getting that really flying. So in that case, taking a little bit more, I guess 2% we went for to cover the costs we had creating it. In this case, you also need to divide it by 2. Yeah, it's also, of course, always a little bit observing what the other guys are doing. You barely can do like 5% fee when there's competition doing it for 2%, unless you have a solver that's really, really, really much faster than the others. But that barely happens, and I personally, I'm also not a fan of that. The highest fee I have in the miner right now is 2.5%. That's for Cortex mining, well, because that code was really intense to work on, and the network is rather small, so in that case, to make at least some return, I needed to pull that up. But yeah, I'm usually not going above that, and always try to keep it below 2%. Anyways, usually the fee kind of reflects the work that went into the codes for creating them as well.
A pergunta 5 é, Lolliedieb, qual é a sua opinião sobre moedas como Nexa, Dynex e outras moedas que a descentralização de pools, funcionamento, software de mineração dependem da autorização do desenvolvedor da moeda?
First, stuff like higher confirmation times, well, that's not really an issue. In my opinion, that just happens. There have been projects with even longer time, so that, in my opinion, is perfectly fine. Permissions, generally, that's a little bit different topic for me. In my opinion, proof of work should be more or less free for everyone to participate. So if you have a proof of work chain, everyone that is running a proper node should be allowed to add their blocks to the chain and not to put any gatekeeping before it. Because in my opinion, often those gatekeeping is done to hide stuff that isn't well done in the consensus. So hiding, like it is a little bit like hiding weaknesses in the protocol. So in my opinion, you always should try to just change the specifications in a way that everyone following these specifications then can freely participate. Of course, I see with some newer projects it's going to be more and more complicated, especially if you're like moving in useful work into the mining process. Then situations can happen where you need to do a little bit like gatekeeping or install a certain wrapper software that then also is able to pull useful work to mix it in. But still, I'm more of the opinion that should be solved on a technical level and should be feasible for all to participate in.
Pergunta 6 é, quais são as maiores dificuldades e barreiras para manter o minerador sempre ativo e atualizado?
First of all, the time, of course. Time and focus, because when you're just working on a new coin, on a new project, on something new to add to the miner, you need to be very focused with it. And nothing is worse than seeing something happening during the time when you're actually implementing something new that isn't related to this. Yeah. So, for example, when I'm working on a new like Blake's free code, and then suddenly someone comes up with, oh dear, something changed at Ergo Mining. Some other software is now like 20% faster than yours. It is sometimes very hard to react to that in the moment because you're completely set in the other algorithm's mindset and you just dig deep into that one and then you need to change back. That's not really easy. The best thing to do then is just to complete the work you have been doing up until that point and then switch over, at least that if the switch over is not too necessary. What else? Keeping it updated. We're now in a little bit glad situation graphic card wise that we have much better compatibility of codes with new graphic cards than we were used before. Especially for AMD cards, we always had the problem that new cards came with new binary formats, new compilers needed, and well, especially the generation step from Polaris cards to Vega cards, but also then to RDNA 1 was quite hard because you literally needed to start over again the whole optimization progress and sometimes even program whole new algorithms for those coins you had already because the old algorithms didn't perform so well on the newer generation of cards. And that's something that went much less recently. Fortunately, the new generation of cards behave quite predictable if you were used to code the old ones. They're making it much easier than when a new card appears, just to recompile your codes with the flags for the new cards, and then you're already quite fine. Maybe not perfect, but already on a very decent level. Coin-wise, it's hard to keep it always updated because, well, usually you dig in really deep into one coin, as I already mentioned, one algorithm, and then really trying to pull that off as quite as you anyhow can. And so you then, in that moment you're doing this, you kind of stop thinking about all the stuff you had done. And so it usually needs a kind of external wake-up call, like someone pinging you, hey, you're like light years behind on that algorithm, couldn't you update it? And to really bring back the awareness about that an update is needed. And often when you then dig into the old stuff again and try to update it, I did like last year when the East merge happened. I did that with, for example, with flux mining, where I've really tried to polish up all my old codes again for the newer GPUs. And well, then when you do it, it usually also will work, and you will find the improvement, but you need to be aware first that an improvement is possible. And that's most best given by external pulses, because up until that point in your mindset you're usually kind of set with that algorithm and you think, okay, I've optimized that as much as possible. But that's false actually. The truth is there's like almost always some small stuff you still could do and you haven't done yet that you're just not aware about. And creating this awareness that there are improvements possible and you just need to search for it. That's and that's a really important part. We need to do our work well enough and to keep the miner on a good level over a really long time.
Pergunta 7. Qual sua visão, sua e de toda a equipe do Lolminer, para o futuro da mineração Proof of Work?
A nice question, but also a very broad one about the vision. Well, unfortunately, I don't really own a good crystal ball to look into the future. But of course, seeing some tendencies. Yeah, you know, like for example, the stuff with flexible energy prices and renewable energies. There's something that was completely left aside with the first generation of mining softwares and miners released. Well, most likely because many developers were based in Europe or the US or Russia or also China, where you have very stable grids, but where you're also used to be contracted and to have a certain fixed energy price. And that's something now breaking up in these countries with the renewables, creating a quite wavy energy price over the day, for example. And so that's something slowly getting into the mind of the miners, that it might be necessary to run a different algorithm at night time than, for example, at daytime or under windy conditions, or generally to more flexibly react to how the energy grid behaves and what your grid prices are. Maybe it's a good thing happening, because I know in many countries all over the world this is quite of a normal process. Like there are plenty of villages out there that have only electricity and connection to the outside when the local generators or photovoltaics are working. But this is something that we weren't used to, and so this is going more into our mindset. And if we create solutions that work under these conditions well, this is something that generally could help mining worldwide. That's the energy aspect of mining. Generally, GPU mining right now is very hard to predict. It had become much more complicated since ETH mining ended, since the merge happened. Because before, everything was focusing on ETH mining because it was like dominating the GPU mining market with more market share than 90% or so. And since then, a lot of small projects came up that had, well, unfortunately still rather small return, but at least somehow a return, but it's multiple of them, and always new ones. Like we had Casper driving this thing for a while, but they are now transitioning to ASICs. So I guess we will stay in quite turbulent times for a while, and with a lot of small projects popping up that might be profitable for a while, but we need to stay flexible and change between multiple configurations and also multiple miner softwares then, because with so many projects rising, well, every still active miner developer will try to catch the big fishes, but for the small ones, it's not really feasible to do them all in one software. So yeah, we need to add overall more flexibility to the way we are doing mining today. It's more an active process now than before, where it was like, okay, we're creating this configuration once and then do fire and forget. I guess that won't happen that fast anymore, unless some of the new projects starting, unless one of them really is skyrocketing and not directly taking over by ASICs. In that case, we could go back into a situation like that, but I don't really see something on the horizon where I say, okay, this one is it.
Pergunta 8. No Ethereum, foram implementadas várias iniciativas, né, para que todo mundo tivesse uma rentabilidade melhor, sempre ali aperfeiçoando e melhorando o minerador. Com a saída do Ethereum, algumas moedas desconhecidas foram surgindo e muitos avanços foram feitos na mineração para se tornar rentável. E agora, na situação atual, o que vocês planejam para melhorar a nossa rentabilidade? Acreditam mais em dual mining, triple mining, single mining ou o próprio switch automático de moedas?
First of all, thanks for the flowers. Right now, these things are complicated in my opinion, because they mostly worked in an environment where we have the memory heavy algorithms being the more profitable ones. For them, you always start to completely fill out the memory resources that are there, and well, just use as much core power on the chips as needed. Of course, trying to reduce it as much as possible to improve the energy footprint. And in that case, dual mining was possible by using the excess core power for the secondary algorithm. So that worked perfectly in an environment like we had with Ethash dominating the whole thing, and then run Ton or Casper or Alephium as a dual coin. That just worked great. Unfortunately, the situation had flipped at the moment. Mostly those very core-heavy algorithms are dominating. And if you want to put something memory-intense in parallel, well, those secondary algorithms will always also use some core power in their hashing function. And so most of the time, when you're dual mining the classical way, and then the primary algorithm suffers too much, and if that core heavy algorithm is a more profitable one, then this approach doesn't really work. It rather reduces your profitability than improving it. So where I indeed see a point is in like heavily switching, directly reacting to the market conditions on both sides, as well for the coins, as well for the energy side, like mentioned in the previous question. And then I see another point in, and maybe also some development, like, okay, we're mining up until a point where some other application comes in where we can do maybe useful work. Like I have some hope that stuff like AI training, or well, some broad statistics, or maybe video encoding and stuff, like those applications see the potential they have in gaining user CPU power if they establish a process that is as easy as mining. So you just need to kind of give your wallet and connect a compatible software, and then you do useful work on your computer and getting paid directly without needing to sign any contracts or to fulfill any additional requirements. All you need is a working GPU driver. Yeah, and there I see a lot of potential if companies jump on that, because it would feel like just mining, but adding additional income sources for miners. So where I see my point in this is, of course, flexing up my software, being more easy to switch between different profiles, different overclock configurations, and also being able to start and stop immediately to react on external comments. That's something I have on my personal roadmap to improve. Well, also some older algorithms I'd like to spice up, where I see, okay, these were not the upfront most profitable algorithms now the last few months, but they were stable like for years now, and are still loyal to GPU mining. That's a second point I'd like to add. Yeah, and then look for new opportunities, like maybe also integrating something that hasn't anything to do with coin mining at all, but maybe, as I said, some useful work applications, as long as they're as easy to use for the miner as mining actually. That's a kind of important point for me. The user experience is not supposed to change too much.
Pergunta 9. Hoje, né, o canal do Juliano Caju, meu canal, possui praticamente todas as GPUs de mercado, né? E eu estou sempre testando aí as versões de lançamento de Lolminer e até outros mineradores. Como que vocês do Lolminer vê essa contribuição minha, né, do meu canal para o projeto geral do Lolminer?
I mean, you have found like how many different bugs in the software now? 4, 5 around, and at least 2 or 3 very severe ones. Yeah, testing is generally a very important point, and also something I'm very grateful about that other people can do it, because yeah, sure, I'm running quite some GPUs at home to test and to optimize, but it's very much infeasible for me to really cover all and every configuration out there that I can just do. And yeah, it's always when you transport something from the testing environment and the user that coded a solution to something to some point external, and then you really see for the first time how well is it doing in a generic environment, in someone having cards that I maybe didn't running a different operation system, running, I don't know, completely different overclocks. Sometimes you even have the situation that some improvement was great for you, but then changing the OC settings, it wasn't great at all anymore for the other users. And so in that aspect, very detailed testing, that's for me really the key to create a product that's then stable enough to run on the wide mass of users in the end. And testing is just as important as the whole development phase. Yeah. So and that's also why we're really giving some time for that. As said, early alpha versions I'm sharing already in a team of 3 to 4 persons, and then just a week before the miner will get released, sometimes 2 or 3 days, we're sending it to a wider audience and including you. And we very much appreciate the feedback we get from that. Well, it also had already had a direct impact to the miner that was finally released, like pushing the release 2 or 3 days back, because well, one time, for example, we completely forget updating the code for that was for Pascal GPUs, NVIDIA Pascal generation, while others had changed. And suddenly those cards did crash or did produce invalid results or stuff like that. And without all of the testers out there, we wouldn't have recognized that in the first place, because on our mining rig running more modern cards, it was working just perfectly fine. And yes, filtering stuff like that really helps keeping the releases as consistent, as stable as anyhow possible. So I'm very, very grateful for having some people testing this stuff for me.
E por último, né, deixa aí sua mensagem para toda a comunidade de mineração brasileira.
I was kind of prepared for this, but still sorry if I'm butchering it. Obrigado por verem e ouvirem. Continuem a ver este canal. Este tipo é fantástico. Tenham ótimo dia. Thanks a lot. Bye.
E novamente, agradeço aí de coração por permitir fazer esse vídeo. Fico muito feliz de ter conseguido fazer esse vídeo em conjunto. E a gente segue aqui firme e forte, minerando, testando, firme e forte, construindo aí melhores mineradores de uma comunidade de mineração mais sólida. Como diz, né, um minerador youtuber brasileiro aqui, que é o Madness Investor, né? Vamos minerar até o fim. E o vídeo de hoje foi esse, galera. Se gostaram do vídeo, deixe seu joinha, deixe seu like para a gente saber que esse conteúdo agradou a vocês. Se não for inscrito no canal, se inscreva no canal e ative o sininho para receber notificações de novos vídeos como esse. Nosso site sempre mostro para vocês, julianocaju.com.br, muito conhecimento e conteúdo para você, minerador. Nosso Discord está aí, a galera trocando informações, tirando dúvidas e sempre aprimorando o seu conhecimento de mineração. Discord restrito para membros do canal e apoiadores, beleza? Tô ficando por aqui, nos vemos no próximo vídeo, galera. E fui!